Hi, my name's Nikita. I'm a skills champion and alumni member with World Skills UK, and I also work alongside our international teams as a coach. Now, there are many young people out there who suffer barriers to learning. Everyone's been there at some stage during their academia, whether they admit it or not. Now, our next interviewee has a trait that I personally relate to, which is dyslexia. Now, one in five people have dyslexia, with only 3% seeing dyslexia as an advantage. But what about the other 97%? Well, they're 100% wrong. Why, you may ask? Well, if you think of all our famous, not to mention geniuses, that has graced the world as we know it, basically like Steve Jobs, Steven Spielberg, Richard Branson, Tom Cruise, and Jamie Oliver, just to mention a few. And over 40% of self made millionaires are also dyslexic. Now, I know it's not a barrier, but do you know? Now, today we have Sam Rapp with us, lovingly known as the dyslexic poet. She is living proof of this statement. She's won awards for poetry, plays, and books, and I'm absolutely delighted that she's able to join us today. So, hello, Sam. Nice to see you. I'm really glad you can join us. How are you?
Hello, it's really lovely and honoured to be invited, and I'm well, thank you, despite all the nastiness of COVID.
I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear. Would you mind telling us a wee bit about yourself?
I'm a writer, I'm a poet and playwright. I'm also a part-time lawyer, and I'm dyslexic, which affects reading and writing and spelling and sequencing. There's a long list. I'm also dyspraxic, which affects your motor functions and coordination. So I really do get confused with my left and right. And I'm also dyscalculia, which affects my maths ability. So I don't actually know my times tables. So lucky me, I have all three. So I've won awards for my writing, and as I said, I'm a part-time lawyer as well. So there's no barrier to achievement, and I want to get that message across today.
I think that's amazing, and I think it's really important for our young people out there to see that there's literally nothing going to hold them back from what they want to do. I know myself with having the dyslexia, the only barrier that I have is holding myself back. There's no other reason for holding yourself back. So honestly, it's amazing the achievements that you've got to this point. Can you tell me a wee bit about when you first discovered your dyslexia and the impact that it had on you?
When I was 7, I struggled. I'm actually a twin, so my sister is probably also neurodiverse, but she's never been confirmed as such. But I found a note from my mother that said Sam is definitely dyslexic. And I've always struggled with reading and writing, although I love reading, I love literature and books and all the rest of it. And I love stories, and stories were always in my head. But I've struggled at academic subjects, because I just couldn't get the reading and writing and the spelling correct. So when I was 7, I had a really good time at primary school. Things were very good with the headmaster, although we were always naughty. A lot of neurodiverse people, their behaviour is challenged because that's how they can react to some of the circumstances. When I went to secondary school, things changed, and all through this period, I'd never been diagnosed. So I went to secondary school, and I was told I was stupid, I was lazy, and I wouldn't amount to anything, because I couldn't read and write very well, and I used to be humiliated in the class by my spelling tests. I can laugh at it now, but it was quite a difficult time at the time when you're a teenager in those informative years. It's really important to be accepted and be liked, and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with my peers. It was with the educational establishment that was difficulty. So at 15, I left school with no qualifications. My parents had divorced. There was some issues there. And I really struggled. So I still wasn't diagnosed. I was told that I was too stupid to enter an exam. And I just believed that, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I knew that there was something not right. I just didn't know the word for it. I didn't know what it was. It wasn't until I was an adult that I was actually diagnosed. But up until that point, at 18, I was homeless. met a man just who looked very scruffy, and he turned out to be a professor at the University of Sussex, and he mentored me. I passed GCSEs, I passed A levels, I created writing and law, and I qualified as a lawyer, but I'd always had writing in my head, and my first performance at Brighton Fringe Festival when I was 18. And it wasn't until I was having difficulties in my professional life that I discovered that I needed to be diagnosed. And that's when I got the diagnosis. Once I had the diagnosis, the impact of that was emotional, because I knew after all those years of people telling me how useless I was and that I wouldn't be anything or be able to do anything because I was stupid, I had the answer. So that was the impact for me. I had the answer. I knew that I could work with it and make it positive and not negative.
And I think that's really important. And I suppose there's that many young people who do slip through the gaps, who aren't diagnosed until later in life. I know I was I think it was 20, 21 before I was actually diagnosed. And it's literally like a light bulb that goes on. Like, this makes so much sense. I now understand why I struggled with what I struggled with. And I now understand actually it's not a barrier. This is just something that I'm going to live with and learn to use and, use it to my advantage. So again, absolutely amazing. And I'm so glad that you really did, persevere with everything and you've got to where you are now. And I suppose what I'd like to know as well is what encouraged you to write and continue with that passion for writing, and what gave you the confidence to just push yourself and put yourself out there?
I suppose it was just the fact that I've always had stories in my head. I just couldn't articulate them well and put them onto paper because my writing looks like spaghetti. so I struggled, but I sometimes used a dictaphone and put things onto a disc or some sort of mechanical device that would record. And I found that helped. And I think what encouraged me was my mother, really. She'd always been in entertainment. She was a singer and a dancer. And she used to write poetry, and I used to think, oh, that's great. You're actually doing that, and I've got all these stories, and I want to continue writing, because I'd always kept a diary, and I'd always wrote, even at school when I didn't understand the maths lesson, I'd write a story instead and stare out the window, and then the story would become a poem, or the poem would become a play, or there'd be some intrigue going on with the maths lesson. And I suppose it was just to get the encouragement. When I performed at the Brighton Fringe Festival when I was 18 for the first time, I wasn't expected to perform, but there was a group of people and they just said, we need somebody to read some poetry. And funnily enough, I'd written quite a bit of poetry at that point. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go and perform then. So off I went, and I did it, and people were clapping for me after my poetry, and I thought, oh, there must be a mistake. Why are they clapping for me? And they were clapping for me, and they came up to me and said how much they enjoyed my performance and my writing. Amazing. And that's what gave me the incentive to write more. And I realised that there were people out there who were positive and not the negative experiences I'd had. But it takes a long time when you're told for most of your life you're useless. So it took a long time. And just from those people clapping, I had that encouragement to succeed in it. And I wanted to do it. That's what I wanted to do. And I continued to write from there on in and do as many performances as possible.
Just to sort of go back over when you were in school, when you were in sort of primary school to secondary school, how did you find the transition?
I found it quite difficult because I've been told that the secondary school was going to be quite rough because it was had a bit of a reputation. So I thought, I'm not sure if I want to go there, because primary school had been fun, really. Although I struggled with, the reading and the writing and the maths, and really struggled with it, and was always at the headmaster's office. But he has such a way with children that it didn't feel like you were being told off. You were just having a conversation, and he was asking how he could help. And I learnt a lot at at the primary school. I learnt a language. I learnt how to look at things in learning differently and making friends and socializing. And when I went to secondary school, I lost the language because it was a different way of being taught. And I struggled with that because I didn't have that consistency. So the transition, I suppose, was quite difficult. Plus, there was none of my friends from primary school went to the secondary school I went to. So we had to, in effect, make new friends, which was okay. We made some lovely friends. It's always nice when you're that age and you always make friends. But I did struggle with being in this class that just didn't seem to help with any disability or neurodiverse. Obviously, as I said, I wasn't diagnosed at that stage, but I must have realised there was something not quite there because my reading and writing age.
So, Sam, just to sort of hone in on when you left school. So, you left school at 15 with no qualifications. Unfortunately, there still is a lot of young people out there that this is still happening to. How did you overcome that negativity and how did you turn that round into something positive for yourself?
It's really important to look at the positives because when I was 15 and had that experience of just not being good enough according to the educational establishments, not being good enough to even be considered to be entered into any exams, I felt that I was just negative for the majority of my life. And when I was 18, I thought, is this it? Because I'm struggling to get a job. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just want to write. I joined a writers group and all the rest of it. And my dream job was actually a journalist. And I thought, I'll try and apply to be a journalist. And of course, my spelling, my grammar was absolutely useless. So I didn't even get a look in. I didn't even get a hello. So I decided that I would go and try and get a job because I was also unemployed at the time. And as I said, I was homeless, so I was struggling. I went to this job interview like in a small supermarket. It was one of those boutique posh ones. And I just was told in the interview, because my application was so appalling when you have to do various tests, that I wouldn't amount to anything, wouldn't amount to much, is the exact words this person used. And I thought, is that it? That's my life, that's it, done. And I thought, no, it's not. And from that moment on, I turned the negatives into the positives. And when I met that person who assisted me and got me through the exams, and I started to meet people who were positive and not negative. So if you want to be a journalist, be an actor, I don't know, run on space, go to the moon, you can do whatever you want to do and don't let anybody put you down or say you can't. The thing is to say, how can I do it? I can do it. And when I saw that change with the mentor, I was lucky that I met a mentor, because otherwise I think I would have probably not managed to secure much in my life, because I just didn't feel that I was capable of doing anything because of what I was told. And when I realized that the positives of actually living your dream and doing that performance and actually doing what you want to do, that's when it changed. And that's when I started to perform as the dyslexic poet to raise awareness about dyslexia, neurodiversity and hidden disabilities. It doesn't matter where you come from, what socioeconomic status you have, what disability you have, you can do what you want to do. So if you want to go and run a marathon on the moon, go and do it.
Absolutely amazing advice. I'm so glad I got you today. It's been great. And I quite love that you're so open about your journey as well. Do you have any strategies or top tips that you would actually like recommend for our listeners today? So maybe there's a young person out there who is sort of at that point where, you know, maybe their school hasn't encouraged them, maybe they haven't had the support that they needed. Have you any top tips for them?
Yeah, live your dreams and do what you want to do. And if your school or your university or your college haven't got the facilities in place to assist you, there's lots of other charitable organisations out there who have all the knowledge and the assistance to support you in your dreams. And there's so much out there for young people, applying to TV, applying to various colleges and universities for help. Lots of people who will listen. It's just looking for those people, disabled networks, lots of different charities. So if you want to be a pilot, or you want to be, I don't know, a computer software engineer, I just throw anything out here, or you want to be a lawyer and you think, oh no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And I've had young people come up to me after I've done performances or I've done presentations, and they've said, or their parents have said, oh, my daughter doesn't feel that she can achieve this, that's for someone else. Or my son feels that he's stupid because he's been told that. And I stopped them there in their tracks, and I said, no, that is not the way to be. If you want to get a diagnosis, I was kind of forced to because of professional difficulties. But if you want to get a diagnosis and you'll have the answer. But you should do what you want to do. And that's when I focused. And I suppose my strategy for that was to go and grab it. Don't just look inside the school, look outside the school. What other schools have got other programs? So for example, if there's a creative writing workshop that you want to do and your school or university don't do that, go somewhere else. Look outside the box, think outside the box. And as dyslexics, we are extremely creative and we bring so much more to an employer, a working environment, that most people who aren't neurodiverse, because we think outside the box. If we don't know the answer, we'll go and find it. And that's the strategy. Look into yourself, be positive, and live your dreams. Don't take no for an answer, because you can succeed.
I couldn't have worded it better myself. Honestly, amazing advice from an amazing person, and I'm so glad you were able to join us today for that. So just to sort of finish off, have you any projects coming up, anything that you're involved with at the minute?
Oh gosh, yes, I've got quite a lot actually. I do a lot of presentations at various organisations, so and poetry readings. I've just, in fact, I just read a poem for Armistice Day, and I'm doing the big project I've got coming up at the moment is Get Writing for the NHS, to support our NHS in these difficult times. It's been highlighted in the local media and on local radio, and it's to just get people to submit. So if any budding writers out there want to submit, please do. All ages, it's not age defined, it's all ages, and it doesn't matter whether you can write an X or you can write a sentence. Just write what's in your mind and in your what you feel. So Get Writing for the NHS was going to be later this year, and it was going to be launched with the in my local area. The CEO of the hospital was going to come down and support it, and all the profits from the book, it's an anthology of poetry and short stories, so all the profits from the book were going to go to the NHS. I'm not sure if I'm going to meet Sir Captain Tom, I should say, but it's a start. And even if we raise a few £100, it's really in homage to my sister, who's a nurse, and she's a frontline worker. So it's really to remember that there's lots of people out there. So that's the big project at the moment, and obviously doing presentations, poetry performances on Teams, lots of interviews, and I'm also part of a cultural strategy bid. So I'm on the board of that. So I'm quite busy with lots of different projects. So yes.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. I could literally sit and speak to you all day. Like you're so fascinating, and I'm glad to hear you've so many projects going on. And I'm sure every young person who's listening to this will have got something from this, whether they're dyspraxia, dyslexia, whether they have a learning need, or maybe they just needed that little bit of motivation just to give them that push in the right direction. You've definitely covered that. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for giving us the information that you have. Thank you.